For,
Camera?
for like a little battery charger thing.
I'm not sure how to do that. A lot of interesting people and
Justin's really funny. I think I messed up Dan's computer.
You know, like a lot of places do that. But from what I understand is as long as we keep active, stands up now. But I've also heard that they're thinking of like public or something and like feeding out everybody's meeting. So that could
I want to say pretty cool. It has none of the letters on it. And it has like, it has keys, but none of the letters are. I don't know, he's got this keyboard overlay thing that's but there's
Can you point that towards the TV screen a little bit?
That's
Just point it towards the
So I can't do what you want me to do. I don't know what you want me to do. Like, you want me to too big to move rubber bands? I don't know what you want me to do with it. Do they fit inside, or how do you rig this up with a rubber band?
Just do tall. Do like a long rubber band like that. Yeah.
It's not in the local screen message, I promise.
It's not gonna work.
And you had it.
I do remember in college doing an offer
Do you ever need any of these other ones?
Not right now. Here, wait.
I wasn't at all.
Really? Yeah, no, it doesn't say that. Did that really happen? I think it's
how to make
Alright, so I have to put it up there.
press F11.
I should probably should have said right. That's a lot of
Okay. Now we're.
Hit the backspace. Or use the back button on that alt left or whatever.
No, just set it. Set it closer.
Whatever you want.
I love the crypto one.
So
Maybe set it up.
What's your like in the middle?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, just set it down right there. All right, come down.
It's fake update.
Stop.
It's .com.
With the ransomware.
Up right.
So what I've so
Okay. Just, that's good.
But then there are things
Oh, why can't you go? Band it. You might want to take a step.
Hey Dan. Dan, is that Dan? Is that how are you going to be like that most of the workshop, sitting down, or are you going to be standing?
For the first part, I'll be kind of going back. I've only got 5 slides, so most of the time I'll bring up the slides, and then I'm going to be right, and kind of explain all the
He
things
just
that are
needs
on
to
the
know where to put
slides.
the camera.
Okay.
Where do you want to put the camera?
I'll be here for a little bit of it, but not much. Mostly just to get on to the next slide.
Okay.
You need somebody to control the ear for you so you don't trip over the cord whenever you're going across.
That would be good. Yeah, 'cause once I get to the
Yeah.
demo, I want to see all the things.
Are you going to make an announcement, or? Huh?
Yeah, they're PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Hi, folks. How's it going? Thank you for all coming out tonight.
Keep it running.
Keep it running. You know, I'm sure all of you know, Mr. Dan is going to be talking about cryptocurrency today. And so let's give him a big warm welcome. So those of you who are part of our Slack community notice that we have released some of the new branding and stuff, and so everyone who helped out on that and helped make that possible, I would like to give a big thanks. Brian, Josh, Nick, and Emily, who are not here. Thank you. I will say again, for you web developers out there, we're always looking to be able to increase the quality and the functionality of our website and stuff like that, and other of our integrations to kind of help facilitate some of the conversation. So please reach out on Slack if you're interested in that. I will like bugging you guys in the near future, because we do have a bunch of cool things that we want to do. We tried to do the mail list. Did it go out today, Josh? Yes.
Yeah.
It did. So check your spam folders. We have a little bit more work to do on the email side to make sure that doesn't happen, but we wanted to go ahead and get it out. So please check your spam folders, check your inbox. If you're not part of our mailing list, please go to sparktuscaloosa.com and join. We have a meetup group. Please join that. We have Facebook and Twitter, and join that. And big thanks to Josh. He's kind of set up so we can do a live stream today. So if you're ever out of town and you kind of want to catch what we're doing, we're going to try to start streaming a little bit more like we used to. And so he has that set up through Facebook. Is it also going to YouTube now, or is it just
YouTube?
Just YouTube. So it'll be on YouTube. Look for that link. You guys have any more updates?
Does everybody know what Spark Tuscaloosa is?
Yeah.
And then-
So for the new people, Spark Tuscaloosa is an evolution of Tuscaloosa Web Professionals, which is an evolution, or which became Tuscaloosa Web Makers. And so we wanted to take this opportunity as we kind of start to grow the community a little bit more, to make it a little bit more inclusive, to make it a little bit less tech heavy, and give the opportunity for people who are in design and participate. We we tried the coffee last month, and we kind of had so-so feelings about it. So we're going to start something new this month. It's called the Round Table, and it's kind of business focused. And so you can come in if you have any questions about if you have a business getting off the ground, or if you have any, or if you have a business idea and you need some more direction, or if you're just really interested in business and want to have conversations around that. We will have an event for that this month, and then we'll also have the normal Drinks with Geeks on the third Thursday of this month, and I think it's at DCBC this month, right?
Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers. So it'll be at Band of Brothers this month. And it's Drink with Geeks, and so it's normally a bunch of nerdy talk and good times with a bunch of beers. So I hope to see you guys all there. if there's nothing else, pass it over to Dan and let him take over.
Hey everybody, so I'm sitting back here behind this thing. Let me go ahead and kill all this sound right here.
Come on in. There's an extra chair here, and then up at the front, there's 2 more. Come on in.
So I'm gonna hop right into this. Come on, driving for a second.
Yeah, I got it.
Hey, so my name is Dan Sullivan. I work over at Southern Heat Exchanger. I'm the IT manager now. I just got a new title. Ryan works with me over there. He's going to help me out getting through these slides. And so you know what? We're just going to hop right into it. We're going to talk about the blockchain, cryptocurrency. What is it and why you should know? So would you hit that space bar for me one time? So my wife astutely pointed out the blockchain whenever we first came in here. So that's a good point, right? So what are we doing with the blockchain? Anybody ever mess with accounting? You'll know they have a GL number, which is like a general ledger number. Sometimes they'll have a chart of accounts number. And so basically, it's kind of like this, you know. So you have a ledger full of transactions for some dollar amount, where it's going, where it's from. And so you have this, and it goes on and on and on. And so the block. Imagine you take all of those, you put them into a block, so now you've got a block, right? So imagine if you had this block of transactions, you're going to have another ledger over here, right? Full of transactions. This is going to become a block, right? That is all that a blockchain is. It's nothing more than a series of transactions from accounts to accounts. That's all that it is. The good thing about it is, so this is Bitcoin's distribution of nodes. So we're going to get into nodes and what they do. But you can see here, and these are their numbers. You're looking at about 14,000 nodes. So that's basically 14,000 people's computers who are keeping track of what the blockchain is. So they're keeping track of where this account spent whatever, this account received it, you know, and then they have a block, and then they move on to the next block. And so you have this chain of blocks that continues to go on forever, right? So kind of the ubiquity of the whole thing is that it's everywhere. You know, if you look at the transactions that actually happen, the distribution of those is what they call a Merkle tree, which basically means that as time goes on and the world is spinning around, the transactions that are happening on the blockchain, they're evenly distributed, you know, so you wind up with a nice pretty curve here. So let's look at a couple things. So if you look at the nodes for Bitcoin, you're going to see they've got 8,000, 55%, 10%. So you reach your 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviations pretty quick, right? So this right here, this is Ethereum. So this is what I follow. So Ethereum is nothing more than a different blockchain. You know, it doesn't have the same ledger entries. It doesn't have the same to and from. It doesn't have the same nodes. It doesn't have the same, they don't touch each other at all. They're completely independent. And there are tons of these things. But, you know, if you look at the distribution of this, it's pretty nice. You know, it's nice and spread out. So, you know, you wind up getting this a little bit later, but that's good, you know, because you kind of have it, you have it all spread out. You know, you don't have the United States and Germany kind of monopolizing the market. So that's why I follow Ethereum as opposed to Bitcoin. And there's a couple other reasons as well. So we've kind of covered the ledger. We've covered the distributed nature of it, because each one of these little nodes, they all have a copy of the entire blockchain. You know, it can be like in Ethereum, I think the entire blockchain is about 16 gigs right now. So you're looking at a series of transactions that total up to 16 gigs, you know, and there's not a whole lot of real data in there, so it's pretty compact. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So whenever you have this to and you have this from, right? The second bullet point there is wallet. Think of wallet as nothing more than a bank account. So you can imagine, say you have this one bank account and everything kind of started with one bank account. That bank account sent a transaction to another bank account, and let's say to another, and let's say to another. Trying not to draw a penis there. And it just kind of keeps on going. You know, so if you'll pay attention, you know, you see that this is directed. So for the computer science people there, it's a directed acyclic graph. So there's no way that I can ever get back to this node right here because everything is kind of going this direction, right? So that's all these blocks are, is a record of these transactions. You can think of the nodes as a wallet or a bank account. You can think of these, which are the vertices, would be transactions. So, and there's probably some kind of a weight that goes into that, you know, so let's move 1 ether, right? So we're gonna move 1 ether from this wallet to this wallet. That's really about all that there is. So let's move on to the next. You know what, let's do it. Miner. All right, so a miner is somebody who says, okay, I've got all this list of transactions, right? So before this block can be built, this one has to go through a hashing process, right? And so what that does is it's a really kind of a labor intensive, let me go ahead and build a hash, let me encrypt this somehow, right? So before you can build this one, you have to have the hash of this one, right? So the hash of this one is contingent upon the hash of this one, right? So what the miners do is they will come in here and they will mine all of this. They'll hash it, they'll kind of encrypt it. It's very difficult to go this direction. But once you get the hash to verify whether or not it's right, it's real easy to go back and verify that everything kind of lines up. It's like having a weird curve or something like this, and you know that it's going to pass through 3 points. If you know this one, it's tough to tell what these two are. But if you have one of these other two, it's easy to tell what that one is. So that's kind of the whole point of a miner. So whenever you do this, you kind of get paid. You're doing all this work. What are you doing it for? Well, there's a reward that comes along with that. With Ethereum right now, you get 5 ether if you mine a block. That stuff's going for like $200 right now, so that's like $1,000, right? So, if you can go ahead and you can hash this before somebody else does, it gets passed on to a node that can verify that everything looks right, then you get 5 ether, So 5 ether, that's a lot of money. You can imagine people just pouring money into this in order to get money out of it. It's really not about the money. There's a whole lot more to it, but it gives everybody at least the same kind of perspective to see what's going on. So gas. So what is gas? So gas is whenever you have this transaction that takes place here, right? And it goes from here to here. Gas, I believe, is a construct that's only in Ethereum. And so basically, you're lubricating the hands of the miners and the nodes to get your thing into the queue. So the more you're willing to pay for gas, the faster you can get there. It's just like taking an Uber. You're like, gun it, here's $100 or whatever it is. So you can kind of get some motivation to be able to get your transactions into the blockchain so that they happen a whole lot faster. The next level of that is a contract. So a contract is basically you have a wallet. It has some kind of a value, and I'm using dollar signs, but they have different signs. So I have a wallet, it's got a certain amount of dollars, right? So I want to put some logic in there, right? Let me, equal, less than, greater than. So this will kind of symbolize our logic. So with a contract, what you can do is you can say, okay, I've got this wallet, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna see what happens. Basically, I'm looking for transactions that are coming into me, and I can apply some kind of logic to that. And I can make something else happen. I can, we'll get into use cases later, but I'm a landlord and I have an apartment and it's got a Internet of Things lock on the door, and I'm waiting for somebody to give me 2 ETH so that I can unlock the door to their house and they can pay their rent, okay? All that can happen automatically. You don't have to have an office downtown. You can have a contract that sits there and it waits for this thing to happen to come from, wallet number 2 that has some other value. You're waiting for that to happen, and you can tell this because of the ubiquity of it. You can see that it's everywhere. You got 22,000 nodes running Ethereum. So, as long as you've got an internet connection, you can probably find out what has happened. So that's just kind of a way to trigger it. So what the contract does is it winds up, through the Ethereum network, it winds up making what they call the EVM, which is Ethereum virtual machine. So that's a Turing complete virtual machine. So basically means if you have an algorithm you want something to have happen, it can happen. You know, it's not printing symbols on a piece of paper like it was originally designed to do. So with all of these things, you wind up, I guess the things that Bitcoin, they're all distributed ledgers. They're all just records of transactions. Bitcoin has wallets. Bitcoin has nodes. Bitcoin has miners. Bitcoin, I'm sure, has some form of gas, but I tend not to pay so much attention to Bitcoin, but I know that Ethereum has that. Ethereum is the only one that has the contract, and it's the only one that has a Turing complete Ethereum virtual machine. So I think that's about enough confusion and terrible presentation on that. So let's move on to the next slide. And these are supposed to be gigantic sticky notes. Stick that there. And so what is a DApp? So the first one there is DApp. So that's a distributed application. You know, if you're a coder, like I am, you know, you push your files out to a server and they kind of reside on that server. You might run it through GitHub or something like that, but you know, there are individual locations where your applications reside. You know, a distributed application, it's everywhere. You know, it's on every one of those nodes that you saw. It's every one of those 22,000 nodes. So, you know, you don't have to worry about backing up your application, but you know, the dApps, it's distributed. You know, it resides everywhere. Don't worry about backing it up. You know, if you put it into the blockchain, your contracts are there. All right. So the next one there is the DAG. So say you're a miner for Ethereum, right? So in order to do that, remember how we had that block, you know, and then we had the arrow, and then there was a hash that happened in here in order for you to be able to make that next one. So you don't necessarily have to pull down that whole DAG, that the whole, you know, remember the graph thing that kind of pointed to everything? You don't necessarily have to have that. You have to have enough in order to do your hashing job. So the miners, what they do is they'll pull down enough of this DAG, maybe not every one of these, right? But they pull down enough in order for them to be able to do the work, which is this is what they want to do. They want to hash it, you know, because they want to get that reward for hashing the next block. You know, Ethereum is kind of weird because it's memory intensive, right? So it's difficult to make this next one here, which is an application specific integrated circuit, which is where you're sitting there with, well, bad artists, you know, for AND gates and NAND gates and whatever, all that, you know. So that's what an application specific integrated circuit is. It's basically where they put the hardware together. It does nothing except for do the thing that you want. And that's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin has a very calculation heavy hashing algorithm, but it's not necessarily memory independent. So you can just lay out your AND and NAND and whatever gates, and you can make all of that happen. Whereas Ethereum, it's a little bit more memory intensive. I'm not going to portray myself to be an expert on any of this. And if you follow my instructions and you go astray, you're on your own. Okay? but Ethereum, it's not so much. It's not ASIC. I don't know, subdivision. You know, you have people going out there and they're buying these AMP miners for Bitcoin. You know, and you used to spend about $1,500 on it, and then you would get about a Bitcoin a month off of that. You know, the further along in this chain that you go, the difficulty increases, right? So, you know, you're sitting there on old hardware, it's difficult. It's more and more difficult as time goes on for you to earn the same kind of coin. Ethereum uses video cards. With video cards, you know, they got tons of little processors, the CUDA cores, whatever. I don't know, they got something very simple, but they got it a whole bunch of times. And you can knock that throughput out in order to be able to get that hash done. So, you know, video cards, like the hot thing is like an RX 480. That's kind of my favorite thing, right? So they used to go for about $200. They go for about $600 now. But you know, which is weird. You know, it's always it's totally.
When you say used to, when's used to?
Huh?
When is used to?
I didn't start in this till February.
3 years ago, or I'm sorry, the 390s are going for $500 a piece right now. The original price was $300 off the shelf.
And they came out when?
3 years ago.
Oh.
How much do the 380s go for?
Interesting.
Depends on how much RAM. If you got enough RAM to be able to hold the DAG, which is about 4 gigs right now, you know, then you can get something off of that. You know, typically the way mining goes is somebody does all this hashing, and then they take all their beautiful video cards and they sell them, you know, and that's where the profit typically comes from, is actually in the set. That's whenever it actually reaches positive and they get an actual return on it, is they take their money making, they take their golden goose and then they sell it to the open market. You know, they put it on eBay as a used video card, and that's usually where the money comes from. And you know, that's starting to happen a little bit now. You know, they went from, those 480s went from $600, you know, they're sitting at about $400 right now. So, you know, as the demand and supply wax and wane, you know, you'll see that curve go up and down. You know, so video cards, that's what Ethereum runs on. You know, it uses video cards to be able to do all this stuff. I mean, I've heard of people, I don't know how true it is, you know, it went on like ABC News or nothing like that, but they're renting 747 so they can go over there and get a plane load of video cards. They can bring it back to their house and freaking hash it out, you know, and just make all the money. So it's going nuts, especially if you consider, I started in February. One Ether was going for about $10, right? Now they're going for a little bit over $200, you know, so if you can kind of put all that together, it makes people say, well, damn, what's it going to be tomorrow, you know? And so you...
Hey, can I ask you a question, Dan?
Knock it out.
You keep speaking to Bitcoin and Ether.
Mm-hmm.
And when I pull up my little app, see, because I'm new to this,
Sure.
I see this gigantic list of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah,
right?
like I said, you know, the
40
blockchain,
plus.
you know, there's hundreds of them.
So then is there a reason you're only mentioning these two because they're the only two that's relevant, or?
They got $60 billion worth of market cap between them, you know. Bitcoin's sitting there with $40 billion worth of market cap. You know, people have actually bought into it to the tune of $40 billion. Ethereum, it's about $20 billion. So that's most of your distribution right there of dollars that are going into this. As far as, you know, Bitcoin I mentioned because people have heard of it. You know, people haven't heard about Ethereum, you know. There's not a whole lot of functionality to Bitcoin except for using it as an actual currency or a storage of value or something like that. You know, I guess you could kind of watch the blockchain and write your own, you know, kind of server-side scripting that's waiting for something to happen and then, okay, I'll go make this thing happen. But Ethereum, man, you can do it all right here. You don't need your other stuff, you know, it's Turing complete. You'll probably want to write some stuff outside of it, but you know, why go away? You know, go where all the functionality is. You know, if you got a Bo Jackson, you know, the dude played everything, right?
Right.
You know, but if you got Johnny Musso, you know, he's just going to do. So it's kind of the difference, you know.
So you just made a statement that made it sound like you favor Ethereum.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
I own 0.16 Bitcoins and I own 3.5 Ether.
Sweet. Okay.
I'll show, man, I'm open books. I'll show you.
No. I'm just trying to. I'm here to learn. So that's why.
I'm here for Ether.
Because if I get on Coinbase, right? Because I don't know anything. This is way over my head, but I'm glad you're sharing it with everyone. But like, if I get on Coinbase, because I'm, you know, that's all I can do.
Yeah.
It says Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are the three that I would say. You know, these must be the most. You know, but why one of them would be more interesting over the other?
Less functionality in
that.
Bitcoin. Bitcoin does one thing, it runs it up the middle.
Okay.
What if you just want to run up the middle? Or like, what if like you don't know all the different things that you want to do? How do you, like for all of our viewers at home watching the live stream, and perhaps those of us in the room that don't have a computer science degree, myself might be the only one in the room. Hey, welcome, friend. Why would you pick? I guess, since there are like hundreds of different options.
Hundreds. It's
what
crazy.
are-
We could create a new one right now and fork it.
What are some of like? Okay, so you got the running up the middle. You've got all the different things. What are some of the main things that people are going to look for, or that we should be looking for? Maybe if we're not sure about which one we want to choose.
It depends on why you want to get in it. right?
What
You
are
know,
some
you know,
reasons that we might wanna get in
you
it?
want to get rich, right? You want
We
to
live
buy a
in-
bunch of cryptocurrency and you want to wait 10 years and you can buy a house, you
Yeah.
know, put your kids through school.
Just save some money.
Yeah, you know, maybe you want to reach out to the latest and greatest thing and you want to figure out how to do something new that a lot of people haven't figured out yet because, you know, Ether wasn't created until 2015. It's brand freaking new. Satoshi Nakamoto, he didn't write his thing until I think it was like 08. You know, that's when he wrote his white paper. That 8-page white paper started $40 billion worth of market cap. You know, so what do you want to do? You know, I mean, you know, Bitcoin has been compared to the gold of currencies, right? You know, so if you want to store value, you put it in Bitcoin. You know, that kind of got thrown on its ass whenever Mt. Gox got hacked, right? And they lost 850,000 Bitcoins, right? And that's over $2 billion today. It's about $500 million whenever it happened. You know, but what do you want to do? And it's a new frontier. And there's cowboys out there, and there's bad guys, and they got guns, and they want to shoot you and take your gold. You know, so you're not going into this risk-free. I use Coinbase too. You know, why? I don't know. It's an American company. I assume there's some kind of regulation on it. I have seen dollars go back and forth on it. I've seen Bitcoins, Litecoins, Ethereum. I've seen all that move in it. They got high fees, but you know what? It just works. You know, and that's the very first thing that I got into. Was Coinbase was because it was so simple. Man, I went in there, I verified that I was a human, I sent them an ACH to have some money in there. You know, I started this whole thing, you know, I got $2,000 in Coinbase right now, right? You know, I started the whole thing with $800, you know. I put 300 of that into Ether at $10.60, you know, and I was like, shit, man, 8% per year, I'm out, you know, and then it just kept going up, and I was like, well, maybe I'll buy a little bit, I don't know, you know, and so I pulled out my original $800, you know, that I had in, and I'm just sitting on profit right now, you know, so it's kind of, I'm playing with the house's money, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you, you know, I'm not a 20-year-old man staying at a house over there on Fifth Street by Forest Lake, trying to figure out how to write the new internet, you know. I don't mind doing that, but that's not really what I'm doing till 1 o'clock in the morning, you know. 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, I'm sleeping. So, you know, I'm not so much kind of on my own coding up new tracks, you know, to figure out stuff. I'm not doing that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get to that point and get motivated and start working out and eating right and, you know, being good to my wife, you know. That's not going to happen, but, you know, I think there's something there for everybody. You know, and if you're looking for something, there's a Potcoin. You can go in there, you can go throw money into Potcoin and wait till 10 years down the road and tell everybody in between that I got some Potcoin. You know, you can buy Dogecoin, you know, which started out as a joke that has a market cap of $1 million now. You know, you can do whatever you want, you know, it's really the open frontier. You know, Ethereum, you know, I'm sitting here bragging about it, oh, it's wonderful, you know, it's not susceptible to hardware and, you know, they just got hacked for $110 million the other day. A bunch of white hats came in and got 77 of it back, returned it to the original owners. Somebody got out of there with $30 million worth of Ethereum, you know, because we know what the transactions are. It's probably going to be pretty easy to find out who it was eventually, right? But, you know, what do you want out of it? What do you want to do?
And like, I don't really know anything about it, but I think if I remember correctly, you can also treat it just like normal currency exchange. You don't have to mine. Like if you have extra money and you want to buy coins, you can buy coins when it goes down, sit on them, and then when it goes back up, you can sell them again.
Which is what I was, you know, that was me.
Yeah.
So you know, that's why I'm
Have you messed
asking
with
you.
GDAX or is it all Coinbase?
Well, I would put it in Coinbase, and then they, you know, they said, oh, well, we're not going to do this fork. So I sent it to this Electrum, and so now it's sitting there on my desktop.
Okay.
And it's just sitting there. I have the little private key in a box with a lock on it. So it's just sitting there and it's wrote on a piece of paper.
Better put it in Dropbox. To be honest with you.
So, yeah, I mean, I just came here to learn about it, but I just know that I downloaded apps to keep track of the price, right? So I can look at it real easy. And it says, well, pick your coin. Well, there's like hundreds of coins. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, but if you go back and you go back a slide, hit that left arrow. You know, if you look at this, you know, look at the distribution of wealth within that. I guarantee that there is a proliferation and functionality correlation between who's got the money. You know, so why not follow a winner? You know, if you get a stack of applications, pick one and throw it in the trash because you don't want unlucky people around you, you know? That's kind of the whole thing, you know, pick a winner. And those are winners. Litecoin, I think, is a winner too, you know?
Litecoin's bigger than Ethereum in market cap. 2.2 billion to 1.39 billion.
No, that's the number of coins. So Ethereum has a market cap of around $20 billion, whereas Litecoin does not. I don't know what the market cap, I bought Litecoin and everything, but I just don't know it. You know, but I do know that, you know, there's a thing out there called the flippening, right? Which is where Ethereum people say, oh, you know, all of the money, you know, that is going into Bitcoin is going to go into us, and we're going to flip the tables on everybody, you know. So that's kind of the joke. But you know, it's a good joke to make if you're number two, right? You got $20 billion. That's a lot of dang zeros, you know. More zeros than that in Litecoin. We'll pull it up, you know, coinmarketcap.com. You know.
No. I can't even read educated, so.
Yeah. I think the way to think about these is in the real world, there are hundreds of different currencies. You know, South Africa has a currency. But people mostly think about the US dollar and the euro and maybe the Chinese yen, because those are the biggest ones and those are kind of the movers. And so, you know, you can say, well, what currency should I buy? But, you know, buying those are the big ones is probably where you want to be.
That's right.
It's more stable.
It's more stable. That's what everybody uses. You can sell it off easier.
And it's like with any other investment, like there are, like he was mentioning, like other coins out there. And so if you were to invest in currency, like you would have to do as much due diligence with cryptocurrency as you would in like.
You better.
Is there an exchange rate, like if you wanted to switch?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I
We'll get
mean,
into that.
what's the equivalent of the US dollar, and what's the equivalent of maybe a euro?
Depends on what exchange you use. You know, if you use Coinbase, they're going to charge you $3, $2.99 for a transaction. You know, and depending on which way you go, you know, it's going to cost you $6 to move something from one to the other. You know, whereas if you use an exchange, you know, and you'll see it's not as user friendly, you know, but it looks like every other brokerage account you ever had.
Yeah.
You know, you can set limit, market, whatever. You know, you can buy it on margin if you want. You know?
So many.
I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts, you know, you can lose your ass if you want to, you know?
There's your exchange rate for
Freedom.
Bitcoin.
They're gonna have options, I saw,
Means a lot
correct?
to me.
I haven't delved into the margin. I'm just straight playing long or short, you know? Actually, I'm playing ratios and I'm playing long, you know? I'm playing the ratio between this coin and this one, and I'm, or dollar, you know? And that's basically all that I'm playing, you know?
Okay.
And granted, I got lucky, you know, I mean, I hopped in there at 10, it's hard to fail whenever you hop into something that's, you know, $200 now, and you hopped in at $10, and you're an 8% per year kind of guy, and you're like, I'm winning, you know? I don't have 30 Ether anymore, you know, but I'm not losing, you know? I got taxes to declare at the end of the year, but shit, we all got problems. You know, this is the thing that Litecoin and the others will never have. They'll never have the proliferation. They'll never have this many bodies doing their stuff. This is my opinion. This is all my opinion, y'all. And don't blame me if you do what I tell you to do. You will never, right now you won't find this anywhere else. You won't find 14,000 and 22,000 nodes keeping track of the blockchain.
Okay, last time. Well, with the fork then, and this Bitcoin Cash they created,
Sure.
that's supposed to be better,
Yeah,
Ethereum's still #1 in your book.
yeah.
Over the
Oh.
Bitcoin Cash.
It's a Turing complete virtual machine.
Let's pretend like I don't know what Turing complete means.
It means if you come up with a function or an algorithm, or, you know, somebody pays me rent, I turn on a lock, you know, if you figure out an algorithm, basically, that's a Turing complete computer, you know, it can do an algorithm. It's an unnamed, if anybody has a better definition.
Yeah, the thing about it is instead of just a dollar bill being a piece of paper, that are tied to that currency. And so by Turing complete means you can put in a set of computer instructions that'll be tied to that transaction.
It's like buying, you know, last week we did you know, you brought out the Arduinos, you know, I was like, what's the difference between the Arduinos and the Raspberry Pi, you know, and the point was that, you know, the Raspberry Pi is probably Turing complete because it's, you know, it's got the ALU, it's got the whole dang shebang, whereas, you know, the Arduino stuff, it does a specific set of functionality, you know, it's Johnny Musso up the middle, you know, and that's what it does, and it does it faster than this one will ever do. But that's all it does, you know. It's like having an app on your phone for a flashlight and having a flashlight, you know. what you wanna do, you know?
Okay, thanks,
That-
sorry about.
No, man, I want this stuff. I want this stuff. I'll find your Coinbase address after this and I'll send it to me. But this is the difference between, you know, the top two and the rest of them, is that people are getting behind it, you know, they don't want regulation.
What about the applications behind Ethereum, like building applications on top of the Ethereum network?
Man, that is the frontier right now.
Isn't that
You know,
why
and we'll get
Ethereum's
into that.
getting so big?
Yeah, go to that next.
And
that
also
next
like,
slide.
so like the different, one of the other big difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin, where I understand, if you're in the mining game, you have a whole lot more disadvantage as an individual like us mining Bitcoin because of the type of infrastructure. Like, it is more, you can actually, as a company, throw money at it and still make money. Whereas you have a little bit more of an even playing field with Ethereum if you're from a mining purpose, like because of the resource constraints that are put on the mining aspect of it. It just helps put everyone on a more equal playing field. And one of the other reasons why Bitcoin is so big, it was like, this is the first one. Like, it was the first mover in the market that was able to essentially establish this as an actual thing. So it was like everyone after that had to play catch up.
Cool.
That's exactly right. You're on the nose with all that.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
What about cloud mining? Have you ever gotten into that?
So those are the Bitcoin stuff. Is
Yeah,
Well,
is it-
you can cloud mine Ethereum too, but you know, my opinion is that's not worth it. You know, that's. Let me get a little bit further along, and then I'll come back and visit that. That's a good question. So this one right here, the jobs. Man, go to Monster, go to Dice, just put in the word blockchain. You'll see $200,000 jobs left and right. I mean, they're freaking all. You can have no experience, but you know how to code, and you want to learn how to do this thing, and maybe you got a Coinbase account, you're making 60 grand. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, I mean, my first job out of school was nothing. You know, so you know, you got to watch out for hackers and scams because this is the Wild West. You know, I mean, I told you about the $100 million thing the other day on the Ethereum. You know, there's all kinds of stuff. You know, Ethereum itself is a fork of itself. You know, there's Ethereum Classic because somebody figured out, oh, there's this other rule. You know, the one the other day, the thing that it was about was so say I own something, right? And I have, there's a key that's public and there's a key that's private, right? And so, you know, everybody has the public key, you know, but the private key really kind of shows how you go on it, right? So you have this key, private, 2 and 1, and actually it was 3 of them that it went to. And so somebody figured out, oh, there's an error in the code for what the Ethereum blockchain is, and I can go in there and I can reset all of these keys. And now I own $100 million worth of stuff. And if I was a little bit better programmer, instead of doing everything on the code command line, you know, I would have gotten all 110. But I only got 33, and the white hats came behind me and they scripted everything out, stole all the money basically, you know, found the people that owned it and gave it back to them, you know. But then they fixed the problem in the meantime. So it is totally the Wild West. You want to talk about scams? So there's one called My Ether Wallet. You know, you're going to Google. These kids, I don't know how much they're paying for that click, but I guarantee you they have paid for it every time somebody clicked it. So this is myethwallet.net, you know. This is myetherwallet.com. You know, that's the original, right? You know, but you can buy ads, and if you bid enough, it'll be at the top instead of on the side. And I'm sure all that has changed a whole lot since I messed with it. So, you know.
And that's completely fake. It's just not even.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, they'll let you go in there and put in your password and everything, and then they're, bless you, they're going to take that, and they're going to go over to myetherwallet.com, and they're going to take all your stuff and transfer it over to their wallet, and they're the only ones who own that private key, you know?
Is that the most common kind of scam?
I think phishing scams.
It's like Nigerian Prince, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
so I was going to ask.
everywhere.
Like, yeah.
It's everywhere. They're trying to find new ways to do it.
Yeah.
The Nigerian Prince.
We all knew what that was.
So there are exchanges, you know, the ones that I deal with mostly are Coinbase and GDAX, you know, and they're basically the same thing except for Coinbase has a better front end, they charge more money, but they have a better front end, you know? They'll also let you kind of buy stuff on margin too. Like if you go in there and you say, all right, I'm gonna send you an ACH, which takes 2 or 3 days to buy, and that's how I bought the first bit of coins, was you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm gonna send you an ACH, here's my routing number and my account number and everything. And you actually buy it at that $10.60 that you bought it at initially, even though whenever the transaction actually clears coming from your bank, it's $12, you know, and you're like, well, I'm just gonna sell now and go buy a bicycle or something, you know? So, you know, they do little things like that, which are valuable, you know, if you're in a rising market, yeah. You know, you're basically buying on a margin right there, so, you know, but the exchanges, they don't charge you $99. I haven't even done the math, but, you know, just sitting there dealing with it, it's pennies on the dollar, because all it is it's not even a click, you know, it's a script on their side that is automated. They got a contract, I don't know what they got going on in the background, but it's nothing. You know, it's just like, I don't know, like say, you used to call up your broker and say, buy me 30 shares of Priceline, you know, and then he'd send you a bill for $50, you're like, well, what the fuck? You know? And then along came these exchanges, you know, and you can go out and you can buy $7 trades or get like 100 free ones, or it's just like that, you know. So, you know, use a real exchange if you're just in there to try to trade it up and down and play the market. Use Coinbase if you want to be new doing stuff. Use others, you know. There's Poloniex, there's a bunch of them. Coinbase is in America. They got an app. I got it on my phone. I can always look at it and feel reassured that I'm doing the right thing, you know. So
really disappointed in yourself for making
exactly.
a bad decision for that day.
I'll take bad decisions, you know. I mean, I sold a coin the other day at $150, you know. Why? Well, because the market was going down and I panicked, you know. And I'm human as I can possibly be. I'm as human as, but you know, I'm $2 grand up. So, you know, use cases. All right. So since you have this transaction ledger, right, and this is available to everybody, everybody can have a copy of that. One good use case that I've heard of is, say you ever bought a house, you ever bought something like that, you know, that you send somebody to go down to the courthouse and look through a bunch of papers and get on that old AS400 computer or microfiche, whatever they're doing, to look up to see if anybody holds a lien on your piece of property. If you had this in a blockchain.
And then somebody else sells you insurance on that title.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Somebody else says, oh, well, you paid us to do this job, but then you better pay somebody else in case we did the job wrong.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then Jerk Dan shows up down the road 10 years later, and he's got a lien in his hand saying, hey, man, I own half of this property because my grandfather owned it and I was the whatever on the top, you know, so you don't have to worry about it. It's right there. You know, you can read it, you can parse it, you can see exactly what it is.
People, machines.
Huh?
Distributed across thousands of people.
Yeah, there's a copy of it everywhere, you know, it's on that map. Everybody has a copy of the exact same thing. You know, so this one right here, that's the joke he's making. I backed up the blockchain instead of his wallet. So why are you backing up the blockchain? Everybody's got a copy of the blockchain. Anybody got a copy of your private key for your wallet? You know, so you want to back up your wallet, not the blockchain. Use cases, I think we kind of get the point. But it's really about being able to read and find out what the truth is. You know, there's less segue.
Distributed truth.
It's distributed truth, you know.
Isn't there a flaw to the exchanges though? If one exchange owns more than the other exchange, they have a more say over everybody else?
It's not so much on the exchange, it's on, go back page. So it's on the nodes. So
Okay.
if you control 50% of the nodes, you know, this is all built by consensus. If you own 51% of the nodes, 51% of the processing power, then you can kind of rewrite the whole blockchain, you know. They've got miners now, you know, to where there's a chance that they could go in, and if you own 51%, then you can decide what the actual truth is. You know, the previous block, you can decide what the hash of that is, you know. So, you know, we rely on a good distribution, you know. Bitcoin, it's real United States and Germany heavy. You know, this is spread out. That's a great distribution. That's a flat, nice kind of bulbous curve. You know, this is a tall. You know, it peaks in the middle. You know, so this has more outliers. This is more outrageous. You know, this is more kind of distributed. You know, the rights of the people are kind of with the people in this Ethereum thing.
I also want to say, so that the reason why that is some of the stuff I was talking about earlier, if I'm correct, is that the reason why it's in U.S. and Germany so much is that's where a lot of the wealth is, and a lot of people have been able to
put a bunch of money into being able to control that network, where some of the characteristics around Ethereum allows for it to be more distributed across a wider range of people.
Okay, and if you don't mind, can I get one more in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I have this app that I downloaded, and it's showing me live trades for the Bitcoin across every exchange. And I noticed that there's a pretty wide spread on the various prices. And
Yeah, so you know I told you I'm an 8% guy, right? You know, in my 401k and retirement kind of stuff, I'm totally getting to your point. I'm an 8% guy. I like nice and steady and secure, and you know, I feel like if you're making 15% per year, that's arbitrage. You know, you're playing the system. You ever read the Flash Boys?
No.
So what they would do with that is they would they'd get a new piece of paper. They'd stick that old one in the wall. And that's a good question. That's a good point. So you got this exchange right here, right? And they got something for $1. You got this other exchange over here, and it's got something for 98 cents. There's a market, so there's a lot of demand for it. You have your office right here in between it. Everybody else has their office out here, right? So the distance here plus here, that's a big number, you know? The distance from here to here, you know, it's a lot shorter than everybody else. So what you can do is you can look for this person who's trying to buy whatever stock or security or whatever you're selling, and you can say, you know what, I can hop in between that. I can offer something. They're looking here. This is their closest place. I can offer this thing at 99 cents. All I got to do is handle the transaction, and I'm making a penny. That's all I got to do. So the Flash Boys, it was about proximity to the place because the speed of light is a fixed number, you know. So people were paying hundreds, millions of dollars to be able to get a rack that was right next to the box in the data center that did all, could kind of feed it back out. So what a lot of people will do is the exact same thing. You know, and actually what they'll do with cryptocurrencies is they'll just buy it, and then they'll command line transfer it to another account that they have on that other exchange, and then sell it, and then do it all over again. And you can imagine if you do that about $2 or $3 million or 2 or 3 million times in a day, hey,
You're doing a penny.
that's a lot of pennies.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dang pennies, you know?
Okay.
So that's arbitrage, you know, that's playing the market. That's selling something for what it's not really worth. But you know what other people think it's worth.
Yeah.
You're playing the middle.
I just found it interesting that it's the same asset and that it's a
So,
Bitcoin.
do you do much with like other like stocks and equities and stuff like that?
Sure, but they all trade on a single exchange, right? So
No.
they would be listed
No,
on
like-
New York Stock Exchange.
But like if I look at so for me, like when I look at my app and there's like a pool of things, like there is like the market price, and then there are the maximum price for that in the market, and there's a minimum price, and there's normally like a 5 to 10% difference between
The bid
what
and ask.
Yeah.
Spread, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of have the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You know, there's a Royal Bank of Canada, whenever the crash of 2008, they realized, oh man, this is going on. You know, this is hot new shit, you know? And so, dude set up, made himself his own exchange. Took a whole bunch of fiber and coiled it up on the floor, so everybody's on the same playing field. You know, if you're gonna get to that server, it's gonna take you about the same amount of time as everybody else, and you're not gonna have time to get back over to this place to sell it to that dude for 99 cents and make your penny. You know, and that's, I don't know how they're doing, you know, they got more money than we do, but, you know, that was the whole idea behind that. So that's just arbitrage. That's just finding the same asset for a different price.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
Like
in a different
algorithmic
market.
trading right now is doing that. Like there are companies who are specifically buying and installing their own data centers within spitting distance of exchange data centers, so there's that transaction time they can beat.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
They're buying up the properties between, or at least the frontage rights between point A and point B, so they can run fiber underneath the farm. You know?
Within milliseconds of someone else buying it. Like that's like the time period.
Hey,
It is just a distance thing that a lot of them are doing.
Thank you.
that's exactly right.
I was just gonna say, I think we're roughly at 45 minutes, so I don't know how many slides
you have left, so maybe we want to hold some questions till the end, so let him kind of get through his presentation. All right, let's go to the next one. So we got down to the jobs, scams, Turing completeness, we covered that, exchanges, use cases, we covered that. All right, so let's do it. So what's the next one? All right, let me try.
All right, you got it.
Thank you, Ryan, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, so for those of you who have not seen that little picture up there, where's my cursor? So this is Coinbase, all right? This is GDAX. This is my Ethermine app. You know, it shows me I got 3 miners running. My unpaid balance. The way I didn't even cover pools. All right, let me cover this real quick. All right, so pools, the way they work is you remember where you're sitting here and you're looking for your 5 ETH. And I hope it didn't go through to your wall.
It's okay. Magic eraser.
If so the problem that is kind of coming to play now is that it's difficult to find a new block to mine. You know, so what they have is they have pools. So they have all these people and they're pooling their resources, you know, to be able to mine the next block, get the 5 Ether, right? And then all of the constituents to mining that block, they get their own little share of that 5 Ether, right? So that's what a mining pool is. So the one that I use is called Ethermine. This is my phone app. Charge your phone. You know, so I got 3 of them running. I'm averaging 65 megahashes per second. And in a month, I will get about half an ETH off of that. You know, whenever I first started doing this back in February, I had 1 card and it would give me 0.7 ETH. So remember how I talked about how this is contingent upon this and it never stops, and so the difficulty increases? That's what we're dealing with here. You know, I've got 3 workers now. You know, they're all mining pretty much the same thing, but I'm getting a less number on my return. And I'm just hoping that it goes to, they say to the moon is kind of what they say on it. So that's Ethermine. So Geth is kind of like a command line interface to be able to interact with, there it is.
It's not 4K.
Oh, there it is. That's a tiny cursor. So this right here, this is Geth, right? And so I'm syncing the blockchain here. You can see that I'm not synced up because we have a number greater than 1. You know, whenever you're all synced up, you're only going to get in 1 block at a time. When you're trying to catch up, you can take a whole bunch of blocks, you know, and kind of let it render out. This right here, this was transferring using Geth Ether from the wallet to which I mine into my Coinbase wallet so that it's dollar accessible. On top of Geth, there's also a JavaScript library, ready.js. Isn't that funny that they write this stuff in JavaScript? But
Everything's in JavaScript.
I guess so. I guess so.
You can build robots in JavaScript.
I guess so. But Web3 is just, it's basically a JavaScript library that sits on top of Geth. So let's go to the next one. And so we're going to do, you know what, let me go back. I was going to show you where my cursor was.
Down the bottom, middle.
Come over here. Here it is. All right. So this right here. So this is Coinbase. All their stuff runs on top of AWS, so whenever that crashes next time, you're not going to be able to get to anything. But you know, it shows you a more or less real-time value of what each one of these cryptocurrencies is, right? I told you I was going to be open books with you. This is what I got in it, you know. So Ethereum, I've got 3.6, valued at 800. I got a couple US dollars because I'm betting on bad things or preparing. I'm hedging against bad things happening, I guess. And I got 0.165 Bitcoin. But you know, it's $400, right? And so, you know, it shows you when your transactions move. This was me testing about 7 o'clock this morning, trying to make sure that whenever I came in here, I could do the real demo. Here, This is GDAX. So this is like an exchange. If you've ever had a brokerage account, you ever had a Scottrade account, Charles Schwab, anything like that, you know, you're going to have tools that look a lot like this. And you'll notice, you know, this is all real time, you know, so this is happening. Ooh, 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 here's the ass, there's the spread, you know, these are all the transactions. You know, the thing I like about Coinbase, you know, I like simple things. And so Coinbase is real easy to deal with. I started this one with $100. I got real lucky on Litecoin, and, you know, so I'm sitting at 186 right now. So, you know, we're slowly moving, right? So we're gonna go to the real demo if I can find it.
Hey Dan,
Hey.
what's a I guess a small amount of money that somebody could start something with this if they just wanted to play with it, like $100?
$100, you know, $100, put it in GDAX, because then that way, whenever you buy, your transaction fees are really low. You know, if you put $100 into Coinbase, you're going to pay $3 every time that you buy or sell something.
Yeah.
You know, that's 3%. I mean, you got
It's
to margin up to be able to make that turn into something, right?
You could play around for a while with $100.
Yeah, you know, it's like the farmer who won the lottery, and he said, "Dang, I can farm till I'm dead now. You know, I got enough money." So, yeah, you could totally do it like that. So we're going to try to get into the real demo here. So with this one right here, this is us syncing the blockchain. All right, you see here, I'm getting one block at a time now, right? How much time do I have, y'all? Got a handful of minutes.
The clock is way off.
Is it?
No, it's not.
And so
Your internal clock.
we won't do
It's
that.
always off.
So why do you sync the blockchain again? I might have missed that one.
So you want to sync the blockchain. So what we're about to do right now is we're going to transfer money. We're going to transfer Ether from a wallet that is our own wallet. I got the private key. That's my wallet. That's the wallet to which I mine. And we're going to transfer it from that wallet where you've had your miner running on, and we're going to transfer that ETH into Coinbase so that I can turn those into dollars. All right. So Coinbase, they'll give you the address of the wallet that you're using, but it's so obfuscated. You know, whenever you go into the blockchain, and I'll show you a couple websites here, you see no transactions on it. So it's really kind of wild westy, right? You know.
Is it okay streaming when you do all this? Should we?
Oh, I'm gonna hide my.
Okay,
my
just wanted to
password.
make sure.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
FYI, the internet.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go to Geth, and we're gonna say Geth, attach. So now I'm attached to my wallet. This is the wallet address. So I always go in here and I look for EAD, the 552, and then DADA right there in the middle. And I figured, it's probably close enough. You know, I'm not dealing with millions of dollars. But if I was dealing with millions of dollars, I would verify every letter of that. Never type in a wallet address. Always copy it. Use a QR code, something like that. You know, if you're sitting there typing, you're going to do it wrong, and then you're going to totally lose access to stuff. So I'm going to pull up some notes that I have here that give me the next thing. So we have already attached. I'm raising my head like I got glasses already. We're going to come over here.
I'm getting like a very Walter look from you right now. The top of your head.
So so what this will do is this will tell me my balance. No, that will tell me my address. Okay, so this is how I would go in there and verify that I'm sitting there on the right address. Next one that I'm looking for here. This will show me what my balance is. Look, we're dealing with computers here. What's this?
Windows.
What the hell's going on? All right, so Web3, remember, was what lies on top of Geth. It's a JavaScript library. And so I wanted it to tell me what my balance is in Ether. So in this wallet, I have 1.2 and 1,000 decimal places of Ether, right? The smallest increment of Ether is called a WEI, a W-E-I. The smallest increment of a Bitcoin is a Satoshi, because that's the dude that wrote the white paper. So, okay, we have to bring it over here. So I have to, yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna come up here and let you guys know.
Sign language.
There's actually a keylogger on the network.
Yeah,
That camera.
I hope you're doing everything over SSH.
We're not getting the best.
Dan, that's the same password you used at the last job.
That's right, yeah.
You're right.
Oh.
Do Randall stuff, because he knows my password.
Be sure to type in clear before you bring that window up.
Okay, so what I did right there was I put in personal.unlock account, my wallet address, and then my password. And so I'm going to enter until you can see where it says true. He's in! That's right, he's in! He hasn't done it yet. He hasn't done it yet. All right, so we're gonna go over here, we're gonna copy this long string. And we're gonna hightail it over here to the tiny cursor. Set focus, hopefully that pasted. Okay, so I did it. All right, so what we have is ETH.send transaction from, and remember this is DADAD, okay? And here's my wallet address over on Coinbase. And the value that I want to send is I'm going to use Web3 so that I can get it converted to Ether. And I'm going to transfer 0.1 Ether to that account, all right? So the next thing I probably want to do is...
So how much did it cost you to make that transaction between your wallets?
We can do the math afterwards, but it's whatever gas is, and gas is a really low number. You can get your transactions to proliferate through the blockchain with higher gas, but
Like really low is like cents or
Like a-
dollars. Really low.
I haven't done the math. to be honest with you. I've been
Okay,
too busy
okay.
winning, so I don't. I don't know the answer to that.
All I do is win, win,
I know.
win.
I'm just trying not to mess things up. All right, so we want to.
Not a lot.
come over
Sure,
here.
you're not a lot.
And we want to check, we're going to try to verify that we did what we tried to do. So we should have 0.1 less.
Don't scroll up.
Scroll up.
No. All right, you know what, it actually kind of takes a second to be quite honest with you. So let's.
That's right.
You didn't put enough gas
Let's do
into
this.
it.
Let's do this. So let me come over here, bust a refresh on this. I should have a pending transaction over here.
Not enough gas.
Exactly.
No, that was me this morning. It hadn't hit yet. It hadn't hit yet. So let's
Yeah, we
go
wasted
back
like
to,
5
I know we're running out of
Mexican
time. Let's go back to this
Definitely
guy.
5 cents for sure.
And let's, all right, so
So can you also calculate how much bandwidth we lost today?
I'm just thinking the blockchain. I've not been mining. Actually, to be honest with you, I was mining whenever I first came here, and then whenever I came back, I thought I had turned it off. So I owe you a little bit of electricity here.
His miner doesn't use very much bandwidth at Chico. I'm just going to let you know.
Hey.
Port 5555.
Just place like an Anton up.
What's that?
All right,
From
so
Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay,
That's
gotcha.
the server cluster name is Anton.
Mm.
this is the one
I haven't
did
watched
this
that.
morning.
Yes, you're missing out.
So
I'll have to give it a
you know
shot.
what? From this morning, the one that I did
I
at
don't
7
have TV.
o'clock.
Hey Dan, Control Plus.
Oh, yeah.
Yay!
So you can see this morning, you know, I posted this at like 7 o'clock. And so since then, I've only gotten 2,100 block confirmations. So it's really not even set in stone. Even though if you go back over here to Coinbase, you can see the transaction. You know, I need to get half of this number in order to be able to realize it on the other side, in order to be able to turn it into dollars, basically.
What's
This
the
is-
time?
Go ahead.
Is that normally like, so you've done 2,000 of 4 million?
Yeah, those are other people that have confirmed them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you know, well, this is the height of the block. That's how many of those little squares there are. So I need, well, I guess 2,000. I would need half of what the 22,000 was. So I need 11,000 transactions in order for the blockchain to consider it authoritative.
Okay.
That's probably a better way to say it.
There's really a consensus between all of the nodes on the network.
They have to, because it's built by consensus, right? All right, so we're gonna go back and we're gonna try to refresh this one more time to see if we have a pending transaction.
There we go.
Well, that's the one I did this morning. Oh, I know, right?
Wow.
Hey, we did it. See? So we have a pending transaction now. This will eventually happen, and I have 6 block confirmations.
Nice.
That's right. And so.
And it costs 9
Yeah,
cents.
Exactly.
Man.
And so.
You're losing money.
I know.
Let's go to.
This talk is really
Pass the
costing
hat
a lot.
around.
I know, it's really costing me, right?
Alright, so this is what we just did. We synced up with the blockchain. We opened up Geth. We attached to my wallet. So where I said Geth attach, that attaches me to the wallet for which I have the private key. If you did Geth attach new, it would create a new wallet, give you the private key, which is located in like, C, username to the wallet. We verified the address, we verified the balance, we unlocked the wallet, we sent the transfer, and then we furiously refreshed it. And so that's what we did. And there's my cat tag. Appreciate it. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Where's my man go?
You have to go.
Oh.
So I've got, the first time that I heard about the blockchain was the idea of markets where there's not much transparency, but there's a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And one example is the music industry.
Oh.
So, and there are people working on that, apparently. Work harder and faster. What are some other applications? Where are these other places where you think the blockchain is
We were
gonna be
discussing
more-
earlier, and I
Yeah.
interrupt, but AI is a big field where blockchain comes into play because as terms of verification and honestly danger to human life, when you talk about automating things completely, any kind of AI really, that's where the blockchain really starts to, I would say that'd be a great conversation for the next intro of blockchain, just the other applications. I think that's a whole talk.
Yeah, but one that I thought of which is totally in line with that is, so say, you can get a thing on your browser like Mist, right? That's a browser, and you can put your key in there, and you can do transactions through that browser. Don't lose your private key. How much do you trust the clicks that Google tells you? You're paying $1.33 each, and you got 5,000 a day. How much do you trust that? If you had a transparent bookkeeping process where you could pretty well determine, who's playing your music or who's clicking your ads, you could, big brother it to death until you actually knew what the truth was, So as far as other applications, man, anytime you want to track something, that's probably the biggest thing,
That's something I hadn't thought of.
And then they talk about, so typically whenever a cryptocurrency starts up, 60 to 70% of it is usually gone, because the whales come in and they get that early boost and they go in there and they get them all. And so, then you're left up to the miners, and then there has to be some kind of a reward later. They're not necessarily sure what that is. They're looking for other types of authentication, trying to get things to go through the chain faster, so you're not sitting there with 8 confirmations waiting to get your hot dog at the stand, So, there's a lot of other stuff that's kind of in the works, but it really is the frontier, if I was gonna, I think if I had kind of done the base work, so I had gone in and I had looked at React.js, and I kind of understood how that was. If I understood Solidity, which is the programming language for Ethereum, if I understood that, then I could probably come up with 1 billion different ideas, but I've been trying to do this the whole time, so, and it takes all types, right? There's certain people that like to remove themselves from complexity. There's other people that like to introduce it, and make things break so they can fix it. So, what other things? Something you want to try. That's probably my best answer.
Tracking and transparency.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest reward is the transparency. Like, you no longer have government institutions, large corporations, large